Yay! Here we go again. Let's see if we can get this thing going. All right. Good morning, everyone. It is 10:01 and it is Friday, July 31st. It's the last day of July 2020. So it's I had a great July. I hope you did too. We've had a lot of sunny weather. However, here in Maryland, it is not sunny. It was raining. I think it's just stopping raining right now. So, but regardless, we're going to draw a dog day at the beach. And I don't know if you've ever heard the term dog day, but usually a dog day means it's really hot at the beach. And but my dog day at the beach means the dog is at the beach having a good time. But I have to say, I was at the beach last week and it was really hot. So it was really nice to be able to go in the ocean and cool down. Not everybody gets to go to the ocean. Some of you might go to a pool or just splash around in your backyard with the hose. But whatever way you have for getting cooled down, I hope that you get to do that. And so I'm going to start getting started here. And everybody needs to just grab up their pencils and their crayons. I usually use crayons because I like to be able to just draw and not worry about erasing things. However, if you want to draw it, like practice once with pencil first and then draw it with a crayon, that might be good for you. But I encourage people to use crayons and markers and even colored pencils to draw with because it just kind of forces you to make a decision about a line and then just live with that decision. Because honestly, that's part of the way, life is, that we have to make decisions and we have to kind of go with them. So even if they seem not the best, you can always work with it. And I really want you to think about that when you're making your art project. It's not about making it look like mine. It's just learning new things and making it yours, actually. So I can see now we got a couple of people watching. I'm really excited to have you here this morning. If you want to say hello to me, I'd love to say hello to you. Alrighty, so without further ado, I'm hoping that you all have your pencils or crayons, maybe watercolors with you. I'm going to show you a little bit of watercolor today, but we're going to start with crayons. So here is the drawing that I actually did two versions of it. So there's this one. He's horizontal. You can see he's kind of horizontal, and here's my dog. He's sitting under the shade of the umbrella, and then he's got a sand bucket and shovel, so he's digging in this. His owners are getting ready to dig in the sand. Hi, Kathy. And then here is a vertical version. This is actually the first one that I had made, and this one you can see the dog is a little different dog. This is actually based on my little Yorkie. So that's this dog, and this one combines actually a couple different materials. It combines crayon, but it also has, I had these tempera sticks, which are really fun if you have some, and then watercolor. So that's mixed media. Whenever you use more than one kind of media, art material, we call it a mixed media. So that's what we're going to be doing. That's what I'm going to be doing today. You do not have to make it mixed media. You can use whatever media you have available to you. So let's get started. So I usually would go ahead and I'm going to draw with my with a black crayon. The reason I use black crayon is so that you can see it. However, if I was going to do this myself, like just for my own art, I might use a lighter color, and that way, and then I could go over the lines later on. I don't have to use such a dark color, but so that you can see it, that's why I'm using a black crayon. All right, so when I start my beach scene, the first thing is it's a super sunny, warm day. And so, of course, it's a sunny, warm day. You're going to need a beach blanket. Let's see, she says. Facebook name is Natalie. Oh, hello, Natalie. I know, it was sad that we were going to have a class together and then we didn't get to have this class. This is a little bit, maybe a little bit easier than the portraits that we were going to do, but I think you'll still have a lot of fun with it. I hope that you do. All right, so it's hot at the beach. You need an umbrella to keep over your head. So actually we start with the umbrella because it's kind of a big part of the drawing. And you can, I usually put the umbrella somewhere towards the middle, and you can make, if you want to make the umbrella just completely up and down like this, you can. I like to make mine at a slight tilt. I like to have a little bit of an angle. It makes me think more of the beach because a lot of times people have them at an angle. So I'm going to make a curved line, and I like to put my hand on the paper first. So I kind of have an idea of where I'm going to put it before I write that line down. I'm just going to make this curved line like that. And then I'm going to make the bottom part of the umbrella, which also is a curved line. However, if you want to just make it straight, because it's a little easier, you can. But usually when an umbrella is tipping towards you, you're going to actually see a little bit of a curve here too. So I'm going to have a curve here too. And it's funny, in some ways it actually looks a little bit like football at this point, but it's not going to be a football. So and then I'm going to look to see where about is the tallest part, where's the center. I'm going to have, that's the top of the stem of the umbrella, and then I'm going to line it up with my fingers, and I'm going to bring that stem down. Now I am working on top of a piece of corrugated board, and so I'm getting some wiggly lines in there. I don't know how wiggly they look on camera, but they are wiggly, and so just know that that's why my lines are wiggly. It's not because I have wiggly disease. I just working on cardboard every day. Every time I do this a little different. Last week I had, or 2 weeks ago when I did it, I had a pad of paper, and so then it made the line smooth, but then the pad kept moving. So I'm trying a new thing each week. Each week we try to improve this. All right, so now that I have my umbrella, I'm going to put in my dog, and I'm going to put my dog underneath the umbrella somewhere. So again, a lot of times it's fun to use your hand to kind of visualize where you want things to go. I don't want my dog to be too low. I don't want him sitting on the bottom. I want him to be kind of in line where I made this. I made a little curved line for the piece of sand that it might be sitting in. I'm just going to make sure I'm getting comments in here. And if you have comments while I'm working or questions, please just write them into the comment line. I'm very happy to answer any questions or comments that you might have. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to put my dog right under here. And I'm going to start with the sunglasses, because then I kind of work around I start with the sunglasses and work out from there. I find that to be a little bit easier to do. So to create that sunglasses, I'm going to just going to make a straight horizontal line like this. And then I'm going to make two U shapes. And I want them to be sent, try to get them in the center. Sometimes it's actually good to put a little dot right in the center so you know where to aim. So you can start from the center, make a U shape, go around this way, start from the center, make a U shape around that way. And because they're sunglasses, you can go ahead and color them in with the black if you want to. I usually leave a little bit of white in the corner. That's where the light is reflecting on it. Then I'm going to go just straight down from the center of the eyes, the eyeglasses, the sunglasses, and I'm going to make another horizontal line, but this one is going to be just wide enough that it goes in between, and this is going to be the top of the nose. And then I'm going to do that same U shape, boom, and now I have a nose, and I can color the nose almost that same way, where I kind of color it, and I just leave a little bit of a dot there, and that's going to be the reflection. It's a little hard for you guys to see it. Let me pull it up so you can see. Okay, maybe I should just draw it here. Oh, that's not bad. Maybe I'll try to do that way so you can see it just a little bit more, especially in this dog part, because the dog is pretty small compared to some of the other things. So I'm trying to figure this out. Okay, so underneath the nose you're going to make a little J, and then you make another little J going the opposite way. and that is the mouth of the dog. If you want to make a tongue, you can make another little U for his tongue. I'm not going to make a, well, actually half the dogs I made, one dog I did and one dog I didn't. So since I already drew it, I'll go ahead and I'll put his little tongue out there. Honestly, it's a hot day, so he might really need to have his tongue out, because you know that's the way dogs sweat, is they have their tongues out. So you can make your dog have so let's make the head of the dog. So we're going to make a curved line here from one end and kind of bring it up and around, and there's our dog's head, top of his head. Now, depending on what type of dog you have will depend on what direction you want the ears to go. So for this first one that I made, like I said, I have a Yorkie. I made his ears kind of just going out at kind of fun little angles, and that was a lot of fun to make. The second dog that I made, he has he's got floppy long ears. He looks a little bit like the Cocker Spaniel I had when I was growing up. He's got kind of little curvy lines. But I think for today's, I'm going to make it look a little bit like my neighbor's. She has a Sheltie, and the Sheltie has pointy ears. So I'm going to make the dog with pointy ears. Put them coming right outside of the top of the head. If you made floppy ears, they're just going to come from the sides. You're going to make kind of a curve going this direction. So you can make it go really any direction. And most dogs that have pointy ears also have kind of a pointyish face. So you're going to just connect the dot. You're going to kind of connect the outside edge here with the mouth, and outside edge with the mouth there. So you have like a German Shepherd. A lot of dogs actually have these pointy ears. A lot of different kinds of Shepherd dogs have those pointy ears. Now we're going to make, we're going to give him a little collar underneath his neck here. So it's just going to kind of come down and around. Right now it looks a little funny, but that's going to be the collar. And now we're going to make the legs for the dog. Now, since this is a taller dog, his legs are going to go a little farther than I originally intended, but that's okay. I go down, kind of curve it around, come back up. I'm going to make another like long U down, come back up. And I usually put just a couple lines there just to make his little paws. Can you see it? There you go. And then I'm going to make him sitting. So I'm going to make an angled line coming down towards the bottom. And then when I get close, I start rounding that bottom. When it's getting close to in line with these front ones, I round the bottom around. And I bring a straight line across. When it touches the other one, I'm going to bring it up and over a little bit. And then I'm going to make another curved line. That's kind of the back of his haunches, because the dog's back legs have that kind of heavier top of the leg. And then I can make him a tail. And I make a curved line, and then from the point of that curved line, I'm going to go back down towards it, and it gets a little thicker as it gets towards the bottom. So there he is. There's my dog. And like I said, you can make all different kinds of dogs. You can make your dog shorter. You could give him, you could have a longer body if it was, say, like a Dachshund. It's really up to you, but I thought this was kind of a fun dog. And this dog would also have another line over here so that you can see the side of his body. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it back up here so I can draw the rest of the picture, but I wanted to get that a little bit closer so you could see him. Alrighty, next thing is I'm going to make the dog sitting on a towel underneath. So I'm just going to make a horizontal line going underneath the dog. It's going to be a little bit longer than the dog. And I'm not going to worry so much about, you can, on these, I actually just made the blanket going straight up and down, and you can do that. Just make a straight line if you want, or if you want to make it seem like it's going back in space a little bit more, you want to show a little bit of perspective, you're going to try to angle those lines back just a little bit. So I'm going to angle this line back a little bit in this direction, and then I'm going to angle this one in the opposite direction. And I try to line them up with one another. And then I make that straight line going across, and I can use your finger to help to make sure that you're lining it up. Oh, I did pretty good. at lining that up. All right, so the next big area line that I'm going to make is I'm going to divide the sand. So when you go to the beach, there's actually usually two different kinds of sand at the beach. Well, at least two different kinds. There's the sand that is sitting farther up where you sit, and that's pretty dry, and so it's much lighter. And then there's the sand that's always getting wet, so that's closer to the water, and that's where the shoreline, you know, the water's coming in and out. So usually the water is a little darker there. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to divide it so there's a lighter sand and the darker sand. The other nice thing about dividing it like that, whenever you divide things in your picture, you're also helping to give a feeling of space. So again, I'm going to make this line, and if you want, you can make it a little bit of a curve. It can kind of curve a little bit like it might do at the beach. And and then the next line I'm going to make is actually going to be the shoreline. So I'm going to make this shoreline. And when I make the shoreline, I'm going to make a curved line, but the curve is very subtle. Very subtle. It's not big up and down. It's almost like a straight line with just a slight curve to it. And by doing it that way, it's going to make it look like it's sitting down. If you make the curves going up and down this way, it's going to make it look like the waves are sitting up. Whereas if you make it very subtle, it's going to help it look like it's sitting down. You can make it go up a little bit more on one side if you want, just so that it's not all exactly the same. Because usually when you go to the ocean, the lines aren't exactly the same. Now, where the water meets the land, it's usually white. It's usually foamy. As it's coming towards it, the water gets all stirred up and it turns white. So we're going to go ahead and make an extra line. And that line is going to pretty much copy the first line. It can get a little bit thinner or thicker in spots, just as it would if it was in the ocean. But it's going to go something like that. Now right now it just looks like a curved line sitting above his head, but that's because we're missing the final line going across, the actual horizon line. And when I say the word horizon line, it really means wherever the sky meets the ground, and in this case it's meeting the water. That's our horizon line. When we're at the ocean, you can actually see the horizon line. When you're in the woods, it's a lot harder to see the horizon line. So when I'm thinking of this paper, I'm thinking about it almost in thirds, not quite. This third is a little bit bigger, but like the bottom third is the close sand, the middle third is the water sand and the ocean, and the top third is the sky. And again, I'm trying to line it up so that they're in line with each other. Then I can also create some clouds. Often at the ocean there are clouds because the moisture comes from the ocean, especially if it's warm and it gathers up in the sky. And so I just make a kind of swing up, what we call swing up. So there's just a series of lines. You can make your clouds differently if you'd like. I just kind of like to have one on either side. It helps balance the picture. Speaking of balancing the picture, I found that I have this kind of little empty corner over here. And so what I put in my corner is I put a sand bucket and a shovel, because I like to do things in the sand. But if you wanted to put something else, maybe you want to put some shells over here, you want to put a little crab over here, you can put whatever you want over here, but I'm going to put a sand bucket and a shovel. So my sand bucket is going to have an oval. It's actually what we call an ellipse, but it's kind of an oval shape. And then from that oval, I'm going to put an slightly angled line down, slightly angled line down, and then at the bottom, I'm going to put another curved line that kind of meets those two together. My bucket is going to have a handle, which is going to just go around, starting from one side, come around here. Then I'm going to have, next to it is going to be a shovel in the sand. So I put a little sand mark where the shovel is sitting in the sand. I'm going to make sort of a rectangular shape, well, the top three parts of it. Then I'm going to make a straight line, another straight line next to it, And then I make another little rectangle with enough space that I can put a tiny rectangle inside of it. And that's a little handle to the rectangle. You'll see mine got a little bit bent out of shape, but I'm not going to really worry about it. I kind of corrected it. When I color it, I should be able to fix it. I'll show you. See? You can't, when you're working in crayon, you might make mistakes, but you're going to work with them. You're going to make them work for you. So now that I have all of the basic things, I'm going to start seeing, I'm going to draw in a couple of details before I actually start coloring. One of them is the stripes on the umbrella. You can divide this umbrella in as many stripes as you like. I kind of like to make an uneven number, 5. So I start with one wedge in the middle, like that, and then I'm going to divide this one here and this one here. You might notice that I make the line slightly curved as I'm going down so that it's matching the shape of the umbrella. Okay, that helps to just make things feel rounder. If you make straight lines, it's fine. It's just that if you want it to feel rounder, you just want to make those lines a little bit more curved. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a design on the towel. The first one I did had some straight lines in it. The second one had some zigzag lines on it. So I think this time I'm just going to put I'm going to put lines going. Well, no, I'm not going to put lines. I'm going to put curvy lines this time. That's what I thought. I'll put some curves, almost like the waves of the beach. And just remember that when you're doing this, if you have, you already have the dog there, so you can't, don't worry about if you just make the line stop wherever the dog is. If the dog is in the way, you don't go through the dog. The dog's not see-through. You want to make sure you kind of pick up your crayon and just keep going. Let's see, do I have all the things? Let's see, the other thing that I put in with this other drawing is I put a little bit of waves if you want to throw a little bit of a curved line and then another curved line going the opposite direction. You could have some waves. If you wanted to put some fish jumping out of the water, you could do something like that. Or if you wanted to throw some birds up in the sky, it's really your choice. You can make whatever you like. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little bit of coloring, and then like I promised, I'm going to do some watercolor as well. So we are going to, I'm going to go ahead and color the umbrella. I really like this bright yellow-green color. I think it's really nice. Now the problem with coloring on this cardboard is now I'm getting the texture again of this cardboard. So I don't really care for that so much. So the next time I will remember to try to have a smooth board so that I have smooth coloring. Alrighty. Now, let's see. What would go nice with green? Yellow goes nice with green. Actually, a lot of nice things go nice with green. So I'm going to put bright, sunny yellow. Now, you might notice that I said it's a sunny day, but you do not see a sun anywhere in my picture. If you would like to put a sun in your picture, you're welcome to do it. However, the reason Miss Gwen does not put a sun in her picture is that if I was looking at the ocean like this, I wouldn't see the sun. You know why? It's above my head. I'd have to look up like this. And if I'm looking up like that, I can't see the dog and the water and everything else. So the only time I see the sun when I'm at the ocean is in the morning when it's rising. I actually like to get up really early in the morning and watch the sunrise at the beach. It's so cool because you can actually see it. But everything else, every other time of the day, I don't actually see the sun. So I don't draw it in my pictures. But like I said, if you want to draw it, that's fine. It's your picture. You get to do what you like. Alrighty. So now I'm going to go ahead and draw. I'm going to color in the dog. I pulled out all these colors, and the one color I didn't pull out was brown. Okay, so here's my brown. I'm going to color my dog in. I usually like to color the dog instead of using watercolor for the dog because the watercolor I'm going to save for the big areas. And I like to do the coloring with the small areas because that way I can be more accurate. Now I'm coloring pretty fast. You do not have to color as fast as Mrs. Cicone. It's part of my practice of being an art teacher is you have to learn how to color fast so that you can make things and your students can still have time to make their own art projects. All right, I'm gonna give him a bright red tongue, like that. And I think I'm gonna give him a nice blue collar. I don't want to use red because then it wouldn't stand out. I like to make things that stand out, so you always want to use a color that's different than the original color that you chose. I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to color on the beach blanket. And let's see what colors I'm going to use for the beach blanket. Oh, I have this really pretty kind of purpley red color. Pinky. It actually looks almost more pinky as I use it. Now, if I want to make a really high contrast, I would choose the opposite color on the color wheel. And does anyone know what the opposite color on the color wheel is of red? If you said green, you would be right. It's the opposite. However, sometimes you don't want to make it so contrasty. You want things to kind of go together. So instead, I might pick something that's close to each other on the color wheel. So I might pick orange, which is next to it. I might pick purple, which is on the kind of the other side of red, or just a different kind of red. So because I have a couple different kinds of reds. So I think I'm just going to actually pick a different kind of red. I'm going to make mine kind of go together. Actually, this one is the more purpley red. Now, I'm not as picky about my colors, so I'm happy to kind of just pick up a color and use it. If you want a really particular color before you get started, one hint, and this is good for painting too, is to always have a piece of scrap paper by you, because then you can always test things before you do it. And when you mix colors, either with paints or if you're mixing colors, you know, if you're using crayons and you're not really sure what color they are, what they're going to look like, test them on another piece of paper and then you'll know what it's going to look like. I think I'm going to make my bucket green. Now the outside of the bucket I'm going to make light, and then the inside of the bucket I'm going to push down harder on my crayon. And that way it gives, again, it gives a little bit of a sense of depth because that crayon is going back, it's kind of like it's going back in space. Alrighty. Ooh. Use a little orange for my and sometimes when you blend, when it's mixing in with the crayon, black crayon, it might actually make a darker color, but I don't worry about that because honestly, there are no bad colors in this world. They're all good colors, so I just don't worry about it. I did not do this, and even though normally you wouldn't have a blue pole, I'm going to make it blue because I don't have hardly any other. I just want it to stand out a little bit, so I'm going to make it blue. Alrighty, so this is the crayon part, and honestly, I could crayon the whole thing. That's what I did with this piece. I used crayon completely for it. I didn't use anything else. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can use crayon and watercolor together. So the watercolor set that I have here is it's Prang watercolor set. These you can buy these like in Walmart, honestly. And I really like them because they are pretty good quality. Sometimes you get watercolors and they're very matte. They're kind of flat colors, and I just don't like them as well. These are make transparent colors, which are much more like real artist watercolors. So for pretty inexpensive, you can get a watercolor that's actually, these Prangs are nice because they're a lot like an artist watercolor would be like. Alrighty, so the thing with watercolor is the magic ingredient, of course, is water. You need to make sure you have plenty of clean water available to you. This is a specific water brush tub, which I somehow inherited, but before that I just used cans, plastic containers, anything. You don't need anything special. I just wouldn't use a cup that I loved because you don't want to drink out of something that had watercolors in it. Even though watercolors are not poisonous, I just wouldn't recommend it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the sky, and I'm going to actually wet it first with some water. And I'm only going to put the water in the spots where I want the paint to go. And if you're coloring, you can just listen to me while you're coloring. Peek once in a while and see what I'm doing. So I get this paper wet. Now this is not high quality watercolor paper, so it is getting a little, see how it's gotten a little darker right here? That's only because the paper's gotten wet, but honestly once it's dry, it'll look good. Then I'm going to take a little bit of blue, and if you have a watercolor set, you'll notice that it has a top to it. This top is actually the palette for you to use. And so what you can do is you can actually take some of the paint, just take a little bit of water, kind of mix it in there with the paint, and then I put it up here on my palette. Now I already had a little purple in there, and I just mix it right in there with the purple. So I'm going to get a little bit of a purplish color. And I'll maybe use a little bit more water because I want to have enough water. I want to have enough paint to kind of paint this background with. But you'll note once I start putting the color on, you'll see because I wet the paper first, it's going to go on there nice and smoothly. So I'm going to start from the top, because I like to start from the top because the top is going to be the darkest area. It's always the way it works in the sky is your darkest area is going to be on the top. Now I was using a brushy stroke. Probably better to use a side-to-side stroke like I'm showing you now. And that's my darkest area. Now I'm going to add just a little bit more water to my brush before I dip it in the color again. And then I'm going to go down. Whoop. If I get a little bit of a drip, I just kind of pick that up, push it to the side. Now again, if I was working flat, I wouldn't have a problem with dripping. But because I'm working up and down, so that you can see it, it does drip a little bit because it is watercolor and there's a lot of water in it. And like I said, as I'm going across, I'm actually using a little bit less. I'm using a little bit more water with the color each time so that it's actually getting the color to be lighter. There's probably not a big difference for you that you can see on the screen. You're just going to have to trust me on this one, that it really is getting lighter as I get down towards the bottom. I do try to get my brush to go in there between the little corners because I want the, because when you're using watercolors, you don't have the color white. And the only way you get the color white is by leaving the paper white. Now I know some people say, I have white in my watercolor set. You might have something called China white. That's technically not watercolor, it's actually gouache, and you're welcome to use it if you like, but traditional watercolors do not use white. They just use the white of the paper. So that's my sky color. Now I'm going to work on, I'm going to go down here and work. So I can let this area dry. If I work on an adjacent area, the area next to it right away, there's a good chance that the two colors are going to bleed together. And there's sometimes you want them to bleed together, but a lot of times you don't. And so that way I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on the bottom area. Now I did say that this bottom area is, make sure my brush is nice and clean. This bottom area is going to be the lightest color yellow, sand. And I'm going to make my sand just mostly like a yellow, almost like a yellowish color, just because I can. Sand can really range in color depending on what kind of beach you're at. Some beaches have very white sand. Some beaches have almost gray sand. Some are kind of brown. Some are kind of yellow. Really just depends on what part of the world you're in. Depends on what color the sand is going to be. But it's all sand. All right, so like I said, I'm going to get a little bit of yellow. I'm going to put my yellow in the palette again. I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, put the yellow in the palette. Now, if I don't want, I mean, bright yellow is pretty bright for the sand, so I'm going to take a little bit of the brown. So I'm going to go into the brown like this. Just a little bit. I'm going to mix that in with my yellow so that I have a mixed color instead of just a straight up color. Mixed colors are almost always nicer to look at. And I'm going to go ahead and bring that up here. You know, I think for the last area, I don't know if I'm going to wet my paper first because it's really hard for you to see it. Matter of fact, I think the next area, I'm not going to wet the paper just so you can see how different it works. You know, it's just a different kind of technique. I find especially when you're just starting to learn how to use watercolors, that this method of wetting the paper in the section that you're using is really great. Now, one of the things I also like to do is I like to use crayon, and the reason I like to use crayon is if I happen to go over the lines, and I'll show you. So if I go over, say I go right over this, look at, whoa, it just, the crayon resists because it's waxy. It resists the watercolor. And so it's kind of nice. You can go right, like I can go right over these black lines. They still show up. I can still see them with my watercolor. So it's a nice combination of drawing and painting if you use watercolor with your crayons. And like I said, if you have different watercolors than mine, any watercolors can work. And you can actually do it with tempera paints too. So if you have like temperas or craft acrylics or anything that you'd like to try, they're all good. It's all kind of a good method. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do this water next. And when I do this water, the ocean, especially the ocean near us, and I live in Maryland. When I was at the ocean was a really pretty blue-green color. So I like to mix up that blue-green color. I'm just kind of mixing that up here in this section. Kind of keep making a nice amount of it. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to use straight with a dry paper. So I'm going to start with the darkest color and I'm going to work my way across. Oh, you know what? This isn't too bad because I already have a lot of water in my brush. And I'm going to kind of go back and forth. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And so you can see you can do this without wetting the paper first. The only difference is that if you don't wet the paper first, it's easier to, sometimes you can make a mistake. It will drip, sometimes it'll drip out of the area that you're using. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this, especially if you ever see a bead of water. And the other thing is you'll tend to see the brush strokes more when the paper is dry. Now that might actually be kind of nice. Matter of fact, I'm going to leave some of these white areas. It actually looks like the light is actually reflecting in it. So I'm going to actually leave some of these areas. And what you can do too is you can go over an area. When you're using dry paper, it's easier to kind of go over areas and create these the light and dark differences easier, which we call value when it's light and dark differences. It's almost always the darkest right here against the horizon line. The color gets concentrated. And so I try to put a little extra color right there next to the horizon line. That helps it look like it's actually what it looks like at the ocean. Okay, and we get my brush right in here, my spaces. Okay. When you're painting, it's good to make sure that you work right up to the edges of things because that's going to help make things pop out. You don't want to leave a halo of white around things, unless of course you want that thing to be white. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead here to the sand. And again, because this is the darker sand, I'm going to go ahead and just paint it right on there. I have another brown section. Now again, this brown is very brown. I don't really see that color when I'm at the beach. Instead, I think I'm going to add a little bit of purple to it. Purple, oh my goodness. And that helps kind of cool it off a little bit, because remember it's cooled off because it's by the water. Matter of fact, I might even add a little bit of blue. And so I'm kind of changing up the color of this sand. Now it's probably a little dark. If I test it on a separate piece of paper, I could test it and see that, oh, you know, that's a little darker than I want my water to be. So I'm going to again add a little bit more water from my water jug. And then I can test it again and say, oh yeah, that's much better. So I'm going to put it up here. I try not to scrub the brush. I try to make the biggest brush strokes that I can. This really is purplish, but it's kind of nice. I really should have worked from the top to the bottom on this section. Boom. Because as you know, gravity works down. And I can see how I can just pull, sometimes you can just pull things up even with your brush. Kind of pull that area around. Once the water paper is wet, you already have like a layer of paint there, you can kind of work right into it. And I'm leaving the paper white where the foam is. And so in that way I've created my edge. Maybe that's a little too purplish. I'm going to let that dry for a minute. I'm going to actually use some of this purplish color right underneath the cloud edges to make it look like a little bit of cloudiness, little, you know, the shadows under the clouds. Boom. It's fun when you can, nice when you can use something you already used in your painting. And if I want to give it a little, I can kind of use the sides of the brush a little bit, give it a little bit of texture if I want to, or if I want the lines to be softer, I just use water. So if you want to the texture of a brush, you use dry paper and drag the brush along. If you want to have really soft edges, you wet the paper, and that helps give you the soft edges on the watercolor. And even if you're not painting now, you can keep this stuff in your memory bank for when you do some watercolor. Alrighty, I think I'm going to just change up that sand color just a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit more brown to it. Let's see. Yeah, that's nice. I'm going to add a little bit of brown to that color because it was just looking a little too purpley. I'd never see that purple of a beach. So. And the beauty of watercolor is that the colors are transparent. That means you can see through them, and the colors will mix that way. So the colors kind of that are underneath are still sort of shining through, and I'm blending them just ever so slightly along the edges here so that I can still see a little bit of that purple going through. If I was going to keep working on this, I might make the water a little bit darker. A lot of extra details that I could do. Like I said, if you are just doing this in crayon, you're welcome to color it in whatever way you like. Now, I'm pretty much done with my picture, my dog day at the beach. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to see your example. You can, if you'd like, you can join the group Fun Art Fridays, and you can post it there. So you go to my Facebook page, Gwen Cicone Fine Art, and you'll see Fun Art, or just look up Fun Art Fridays, and you can join, and then you can post your art. It's a private group, so you don't have to worry about it being publicized throughout the world. You can just post it on my Facebook page too, if you'd like. Either way, I'd love to see your work when you're done. I would also love to have your suggestions for what you might like to have me draw in the future, because I do these kind of based on what other people suggest, except for the beach one, because I was at the beach and I wanted to paint it. Alrighty, so hope you guys are having a great day, and I look forward to drawing and maybe painting with you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.